Hey all, I'm your host Michael and welcome back to Awful Stories. As always, if you enjoy, make sure to leave the video a like and consider subscribing if you're new. With that said, let's begin. This story was posted by a user named Gray42 in the advice subreddit. The post is titled, "A guest coming over for dinner tonight is the most obnoxious intellectual you could ever meet. My wife wants a peaceful party. Do I keep quiet or call him out on his rudeness and BS? My wife loves entertaining, which is a good place to start. I am already pretty introverted, so having people over feels like a real invasion of my space. Even without this guy coming over, I'm already filled with so much anxiety that I can hardly sit still, and I won't be able to relax until everyone is gone. So I have my shortcomings as well. All the attendees tonight are from our kids' swim team, and my wife wants to get to know them better. One of the invitees is also a dad with a kid on the team, and he's a professor at the state university in our town. It's hard to describe him, but I'm sure everyone reading this has met someone just like him. Despite being a professor, he's as dumb as a rock, but absolutely loves to intrude on everyone else's conversations to give his expert opinion. For example, I was talking with another dad about wanting to go bow hunting. We were very much minding our own business and weren't intruding on anyone else. I also think we were highly aware that talking about shooting animals with a projectile isn't great conversation for a kid's swim lesson, so we were well away from the other parents and kids while having our discussion. All of a sudden, the professor came up to us, listened for half a second, and then went into full lecture mode about the evils of the robber barons of the animal flesh corporate complex. I told him that one of the reasons I wanted to hunt was because factory farming kind of grossed me out. He actually held his finger up to me as if to say shush and said, "I'm sorry, but I'm an expert in this field." I don't know exactly, but I believe he's a sociology professor. I was stunned and truly speechless. He began to lecture us about how evil our intentions were, and thank God, maybe 2 minutes in, the head coach called for all the parents to gather around him for a discussion on the upcoming practice schedule. At practice today, I sat next to this professor but wasn't part of his group, and I could hear him talking about the evils of professional sports, even though he had been to a pro baseball game the night before. Instead of admitting he went as a fan like everyone else who was there, he claimed he went to research the human condition as an impartial observer. There are certain hipster parents who also have kids on the team who are just in awe of this guy, but I wanted to puke. It was perhaps second only in douchiness to animal flesh corporate complex. What's even worse about what this guy says is the fact that it's clear he's not there to discuss, he's there to lecture. For the most part, the parents who are interested in what he thinks just sit there and take it all in. So this guy and his wife will be in our house tonight. I am dreading it. I mean physically dreading it. My wife is working very hard to make this dinner successful, but I don't know how much I can take of this guy. If he starts getting insulting toward me and other people, at what point do I speak up? Do I take it to a full-fledged argument if need be, or do I just keep quiet, let him dig his own grave, and trust that most people will recognize his douchiness for what it is? Maybe even getting into an argument is exactly what he's looking for. Update. The party is winding down, and I read through the first few responses, but didn't realize this would blow up so much. Basically, the party went okay. The professor guy wasn't too bad at first, but after a couple of drinks, he was in rare form. He didn't realize he had the wrong crowd, and no one was really paying attention to him, which I think was getting under his skin. The absolute craziest thing he said all night was to a mixed race mom on the team, white and African American. He told her she didn't understand the complexities of race in America. The professor is white as a ghost. She handled it like a real pro and just let him keep digging his hole. I think her closing line was something like, "I may not understand the complexities of being black in the US, but I'm sure my dad does. He was actually hit with a fire hose as a teenager." That didn't even shut him up, but at that point his wife had had enough and pretty much said it was time to go. They were the first to leave. It's time to go decompress with some Fortnite. I personally have experienced this kind of thing numerous times. The first couple of encounters with a chronic LARPer are okay, but after that it really does get irritating. It gets to the point where I really do want to crash out on the person, but then you realize that doing so accomplishes nothing. You cannot be a serial LARPer or liar. If you shut them down one time, they'll just come back eventually and keep spewing their BS. It's beyond annoying having to listen. This next story was made in the relationship advice subreddit by a throwaway account. The post is titled "Ex-Boyfriend Destroyed a Petroglyph and Rock Formation at a National Park." We are currently waiting for our shuttle service back to our car, and I think I'm going to have him drive me to the nearest airport so I can fly home because I can't stand the idea of being around him for 3 days. We went backpacking in a national park. It was really his first time doing anything like this, and he was a pain in the butt from the start. He brought way too much booze and almost no water, and the springs we planned on using were almost all dried up. He could have died if we hadn't found one that was good. On the day we found the spring, he decided the smart thing to do was to drink all his booze and fill his bottles with water, but he got so drunk. I told him I didn't like it and that he was scaring me. His response was to take out a camp hatchet and not only destroy a 2,000-year-old petroglyph, but also break off several of those little lava rock knolls that were all over the place. I was disgusted, so I packed up and started hiking out. He caught up to me the next day, and I broke up with him on the spot. He hiked the rest of the way out, screaming at me the whole time that I was a baby. I was so relieved when we got to the trailhead because he calmed down. That was an hour or so ago, but should I report him to the park rangers before I leave? I just Googled it, and he could seriously face jail time for this. What should I do? Edit, I called the NPS office for this area, and they are going to send a ranger out to this parking lot. Update. So basically, my last post blew up and it was locked right in the middle of everything going down. It sucked reading people's posts wondering if I was safe or even offering me money for Uber and plane tickets so I didn't have to ride with my ex and not being able to update, but I appreciate it so much. I was literally blown away by how many people wanted to help me out of a potentially bad situation. Obviously, I am safe and home, but that afternoon was so crazy, and I'm so lucky to have run into some equally great people in the parking lot. So when we got back to the parking lot, he basically told me, "Get in the car, we're leaving." I told him that I wasn't sure if I was riding home with him or not. He said that he wasn't leaving me stranded and was going to go into town to get gas, and that I had better come to my senses by the time he got back. This super nice older lady came up to me and asked me if my boyfriend had just abandoned me. I said no, that I was actually hoping he didn't come back. She told me that she'd hoped her husband wouldn't come back since the honeymoon, but somehow he had the nose of a coon hound, which just cracked me up. It turns out that they were there in their RV, and she invited me to sit in their AC until I got my situation figured out. They ended up being some of the nicest people I've ever met. So from their RV is where I called the National Park Service ranger right when my last thread got locked, and they sent a ranger out. I was really hoping they would show up around the same time my ex got back. Unfortunately, he got back first, looked around the parking lot for me for a while, and texted me that I was a ducking stupid jerk and that he was really leaving. I told him to please go. The rangers got there and we talked for a long time about the damage that was done, where it was, why he had done it, etc. I was kind of hoping they'd chase him down the highway, but they said that unfortunately they don't really do that kind of thing. However, they said they would send someone to investigate the damage, and if it's bad enough, they can submit a federal arrest warrant, and either the NPS or even the FBI might pay him a visit. The rangers said that this kind of thing happens far more often than they'd like, and almost always they have enough evidence and the penalties are stiff enough that the guilty person usually makes a plea deal and pays a pretty big fine. It makes me happy that he most likely won't get away with it. The people with the RV were so nice that they said even though the airport I was flying out of was 150 miles in the opposite direction of where they were going, they would be happy to give me a ride. I literally fell in love with these people. Their whole reason for being in an RV is to see national parks and to eat at as many different Outback steakhouses as they can across the country. So they were super excited that the city we were going to had 2 different Outbacks they could check off their list. They even took me to get an early dinner with them before dropping me off at the airport. They were so sweet that they insisted on giving me a $100 bill to make sure I had money for an emergency. They are going to stay in touch and maybe even come to see me at the end of the summer and yes, eat at the Outback in town. So that's really it. I'm sick about introducing my ex to backpacking and confirming that he's a piece of crap by damaging irreplaceable art and nature. But I'm also glad I'm safe. I dropped a whole bunch of dead weight and got some awesome honorary grandparents out of it. First off, I do feel kind of bad for OP, but I'd be lying if I said I didn't find this story incredibly amusing. The first bit just sounded like really good fun. Sure, it was dangerous, but it's like one of those stories that you just look back on and laugh at. However, destroying the fragile and old environment around them was definitely uncalled for, and I can understand OP feeling embarrassed. All in all, I don't blame her really for wanting to break up with the guy.